Partnerships, localization, and locally led response research. Nakonsulta nga naman kami sa project design, pero sa huli, hindi rin nakinig ang international NGO at sila na lang ang gumawa ng proyekto. Natuto na kami at hindi na kami nakipag-partner sa kanila ulit. Kahit na nag-damage and needs assessment kami at ibang lumabas, parating wash response ang ginagawa namin dahil iyan ang expertise ng donor. Hindi nga mga international ang nag-respond, pero mga taga Maynila ang dumating na walang alam sa komunidad at aalis din naman pagkatapos ng proyekto. Sa laki ng humanitarian response, nasagasaan yung aming ginagawang development project. Nagbago ang kultura ng komunidad sa pagtutulungan. Naghahanap na ngayon ng kapalit sa bawat pagkilos o training. Ilan lang ito sa mga kwento ng mga local organizations tungkol sa issue ng humanitarian localization at locally led response. During the 2016 World Humanitarian Summit, it was recognized that the global humanitarian system was ineffective, inefficient, and funds were concentrated in the hands of international actors. Less than 2% of the global humanitarian funds were directly given to local actors. Through the grand bargain, donors and international NGOs agreed to transform the humanitarian system and increase direct funding to 25%. And yet, after 2019, direct funding to local organizations was just above 2%. The dialogues revealed that the issue of localization was not just about funding. The main goal was for local organizations to lead the disaster response. But ironically, much of the debates and localization campaigns were being led by international actors. Localization was a felt but not an explicitly discussed issue amongst local actors. There were varied definitions of localization and locally led response. Many were circular definitions of local actors provided opportunities to lead humanitarian projects. This pointed out that the global debate was not about the romanticized role of local actors as first responders. Instead, local actors needed to have access and control over humanitarian funds and projects. Further elaboration pointed towards localization as the process of building strategic partnerships, sharing resources and capacities, and promoting an environment that enables local leadership in quality humanitarian interactions. With locally led response as an outcome, respondents defined it as local actors being empowered to drive relevant and timely humanitarian interactions towards people-centered development. From these, the issue of power of locals to lead was highlighted. But who were local actors? There were visible indicators that were often used in the global debates. The starting points were being registered nationally and being independent from international headquarters. Having local knowledge was essential but not definitive, since this was just about recruitment of locals. Having limited area of operations ensured better focus. An obvious description was that being local was relative to the nearness to the community. This was important since it recognized that some organizations were more local than others, and that an organization can be local in one community but not in another. There were also strategic indicators. Having presence before, during, and after in a community meant not only being prepositioned, but also being there long after the response has been closed. Being development-based connected humanitarian action to more strategic community development and resilience work. Being place-based meant being embedded as a local stakeholder, may they be a people's organization, an NGO, a local government unit, a local church, or a local private sector. But there were deeper value-based indicators. Being community-based embraced the smallness of the organization and the rootedness in the community. Being organic meant organizations were growing with the community as it faced changing issues and evolving dreams. The principle of subsidiarity meant recognizing that members or partners closer to the community were afforded more leadership roles. All these were crucial as these local institutions were entrusted by the affected people to represent them in various decision-making platforms. But why enable local actors to lead? For practical terms, it ensured relevant, timely, effective, efficient, and sensitive humanitarian interactions. Local actors have a mastery of the place and the people. They have access to the community and can optimize available local resources and relationships. They have demonstrated being innovative in filling the response gaps of duty bearers. Local capacity development meant enabling local institutions to respond to future disasters, to sustain disaster resilience work and development preparedness, and to enrich the collective capacity of local stakeholders in the community. This can lead to more collaboration and complementation of resources amongst different local stakeholders. It will also connect the humanitarian action to existing and future community development work. But most importantly, it will transform local relationships that are often the sources of vulnerability. It can enable local leadership and citizenship, encourage demand-driven responses, enhance democratic space through local advocacies and rights claiming, and promote participatory local governance. These last three intangibles are the compelling reasons to enable local actors to lead disaster responses. But asked what donors were looking for, the primary partnership criteria for donors were those organizations that already have an existing partnerships with them, an affiliation to a network they support, or a track record. Capacity to access specific affected communities was a second criteria. Capacity to conduct humanitarian action and comply with humanitarian standards was only the third. While some local actors assume certification to humanitarian standards will increase access to funds, international actors denied this was the case. Most humanitarian actions by local actors were born out of their existing development partnerships. This meant pivoted development funds instead of large humanitarian funding. While lower in scale, resources, and visibility, these responses were considered relevant, timely, flexible, and aligned to existing community development efforts. Many local organizations expressed that they were able to do joint, if not lead, the decision-making processes in project planning, implementation, and evaluation if they work with international NGOs using a partnership-based approach, as opposed to those who directly implement or subcontract projects. Also, more local actors were able to lead responses when national organizations and networks were deliberate in their own localization process. This meant national organizations were transferring or endorsing projects, organizing and building capacity of local actors, and filling the competency gaps of the local actors. As such, we should focus on partnerships instead of projects, strengthen joint decision-making with local actors, and work with localizing partners. Doing these have led to better reach to more local organizations and collaboration with local stakeholders, better flexibility and quality of funding for local responders, programmatic capacity development for local actors, joint decision-making have reduced uncertainties, allowing local actors to respond immediately. There was more connectedness between development and humanitarian interactions. There were more local opportunities for local actors to lead. There was stronger affirmation of local capacity and power. Local actors have expressed that the desired shift in power is not necessarily replacing international actors with national actors. Instead, it is a shift from the dominant control-oriented power over of donors and non-local actors to a more humanitarian and partnership-centered power with. How about you? What are your issues in partnerships? How do you envision locally led disaster response? How do you propose to address your issues and realize your vision? Your localization workshop is an opportunity for you to voice out your issues and your vision with other local humanitarian actors.